Hi everyone, it's Rachel Perkins here and I'm presenting today on behalf of myself and Dr. Barry Fraser. We're both from Griffith University at the Gold Coast and Nathan campuses in Queensland. And today we really want to chat about employability amid the COVID-19 chaos. We really want to unpack and understand how students feel with their graduation pending and they're supposed to move into typically a full-time job. We really wanted to unpack what COVID did to how they feel about that. So our presentation today is entitled Employability 2021, Career Perceptions of Graduating Hospitality Management Students Amid the COVID-19 Chaos. So today we'll obviously talk through an introduction, we'll do a brief review of literature, talk you through our methodology, our findings, and end with our discussion and implications. So if you're anything like me, this is what 2020 felt like. It was such a hectic year for everybody. And I couldn't help but think, if I feel like this, if I feel so stressed and overwhelmed, how do my students feel who are supposed to be graduating and finding full-time employment? So Barry and I got together and devised a way that we could better understand what students were going through. So typically a common pathway for hospitality students is to seek employment in entry-level jobs, often in iconic hotel chains like the Marriott, Hilton, so on and so forth. And in 2020, ABS statistics revealed that the hospitality sector, after COVID had hit, 78% of accommodation and food services had made reductions to their workforce, and further, 29% had put staff on paid leave and 43% had placed staff on unpaid leave, and they're not good numbers. Now, this was taken, I think, I forget the month, but it was still kind of when COVID was happening. And for sure, things have improved a little bit since then, particularly with domestic tourism, but obviously things aren't the same and there's still some issues that students are bound to be concerned about. So prior to COVID-19, decisions relating to career paths for students were already complicated for a number of other reasons. And there's a concept called career indecision that helps to identify issues that are occurring during the career decision-making process. In 2020, prior to COVID, authors Boo and Kim had said that there is room for research to investigate how students might respond to stressful situations in relation to their career choice. And this led us to our research question: how do the graduating hospitality students of 2020 perceive their initial employability prospects in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic? So here is the career indecision model. It's exactly the same as it occurred in Viola and their research team's work in 2017. I've just redesigned it for the purpose of us being able to have a look at how COVID fits with this. They look at 3 factors and many sub-factors of career indecision. The 3 factors are psychological well-being, a search for work self-efficacy, and a lack of readiness. So we kind of played around with these factors and looked at how these looked with the added element of COVID-19. Now, before I go any further, I should just preface this by saying that this is really the first step to this research. We had an idea, we chatted about it, and we've just collected some preliminary data, and we have hopes to continue this research in the future because we do think that it's really important. So we were kind of asking ourselves, with that, how does COVID fit? So we just chucked COVID right in the middle there to kind of go, that looks like where it would fit, because for us, we felt that COVID had really impacted every part of our lives. So we kind of had that in mind as we went through and collected our data. We collected data from a cohort of final year undergraduate hospitality management students, and they were undertaking a course called Career Development. We use the online platform Mentimeter. Thank you to Anne Hardy and Oscar from the University of Tasmania. That's such a great platform, and our students, I think, enjoyed taking part in that. They didn't talk much about it, but they were keen to get involved. So they could use their mobile phones or their computers or laptops. They go to mentimeter.com and enter a code, and that allows them access to a 2-question series. It's important to note here that you didn't have to answer the first question to be able to answer the second question. And it was interesting, actually, we got 29 responses to a polling question, which had 3 options only. And we actually got a fair few more responses to an open-ended question. We got 36 responses. So the first question that students were asked is, how do you feel about your career post-graduation? One student said, great, I'm so excited. 23 students said, not good, I'm nervous about the future, and 5 were like, I don't know. and 29 students responded there. Then we gave them the opportunity to explore this a little bit further, and we asked them, why do you feel this way? So if you're excited, why? If you're nervous, why? And here they were able to respond in an open-ended way, and it's anonymous, but all of their responses go up on the screen so they can actually read what other students are saying. And it was interesting. I think that the more that students put in there, the more people responded, because it was transparent, and students could see, oh, I'm not the only one that feels like that. So not surprisingly, I guess, COVID-19 did come up as a huge challenge in how students felt towards their career decision making. The hospitality industry is cracking up because of this pandemic, and I'm not sure if I'm competitive enough to get a job in the industry. Finding a job is difficult because the epidemic is not over. I feel that graduating with a degree in hotel and tourism management during COVID seems purposeless and scary. The tourism and hotel industry was always a growing industry, but now no jobs are available and I don't know what to do. COVID wasn't the only theme that we saw in the challenges. There was some relating to a lack of work experience. Some people saying, I've always felt nervous about graduating and COVID's just making it so much worse. Some people say, I feel like I'll be graduating and I'll have no experience. And they're also worried about high levels of competition when they do graduate. So obviously there, I've just gone in and put some red circles. We can clearly see that COVID has had some impacts, and we've done a little bit of work to remodel the framework based on the findings. Remembering that we're just playing around with this, we don't really have enough concrete data to be able to officially say what the framework should look like, but this is how we've kind of reframed it. So we've actually put COVID-19 up the top because it was a huge factor and it was a focal point of our research. We've got psychological well-being and all of its sub-factors in the one box there, saying that COVID has an impact on that, and your psychological well-being also impacts directly on the sub-factors of your readiness for employment, which is your levels of motivation to begin looking for a job and your decision-making ability. If you have high levels of motivation and you feel that you're able to make decisions, that would lead you to a readiness to seek employment and then a search for employment. In search for work self-efficacy, we actually separated the sub-factors. We felt that proactive career planning and exploration enterprising, which is looking for appropriate companies to seek work in, were part of the search. But that frustration coping was going to be a huge factor for students. So maybe looking at companies they thought they would definitely get a job in and realizing they're not offering their grad programs anymore. Factors like that lead to frustration coping or resilience. If you can overcome all of the obstacles that you face, some naturally occurring and some because of COVID, you would then need good relational integration, which is your ability to maintain relationships with hiring managers, future managers, and your future colleagues. And like I said, we're still playing around with this now, and the more data we get, the more we'll be able to really properly get a grasp on how this framework should look. So in conclusion, the strongest responses were that yes, COVID did have implications, and also students felt they had a lack of work experience. Students have other apprehensions, including competition, regretting their degree choice, and concerns that they're not actually ready to work full time. So in a nutshell, students already had concerns about moving to the workforce, but COVID-19 has added an additional factor to that. And I'm going to play this clip now from my co-presenter, Barry, and he's just going to summarize and talk about how we'd like to further this research.
Well, thanks, Rachel. So as presented, career decision making for hospitality management students is already complicated. And this has been made more complex in 2020 with far fewer opportunities available. However, fortunately in Australia, we are currently in a much better position than in many other countries. Therefore, furthering this research, we would like to see if perceptions amongst graduates in 2021 are more optimistic than they were in 2020. We are also keen to see how universities can better assist students to cope with and navigate the increasingly competitive job market going forward. We thank you for your attention in this presentation, and we would certainly welcome any questions or further comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And this is our last slide for today, just with both of our email addresses if you'd like to get in contact to chat further about our research as we go through the next stages and figure out how to turn this into a more robust project. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.
Welcome to our presentation. My name is Antoine, and with me are Anita and Cindy. The three of us are hospitality lecturers at the Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School at Torrens University, Australia. Today, we want to talk to you about our project, which looks at investigating online teaching experience of our peers of hospitality educators. Does this look familiar? Now, some of you might have seen this before. This sort of represents what we felt happened during the pandemic of 2020, when we had to move from a high-touch environment, from a face-to-face environment, to an online environment. So pre-COVID, we have these high-touch approach to teaching. We have face-to-face classes, we have practicals, we have site inspections, site visits, and post-COVID, during COVID, instead we have online classes where we have a lot of, as you can see here, faceless students. We have access to breakout rooms instead of having groups within a classroom. We have access to whiteboards. So to summarize, we have seen during this pandemic a change from a face-to-face environment to an online environment. And that drastic change happened very fast. And what we have noticed is that hospitality education is very reliant on a face-to-face model to teaching. Now, Anita's going to talk a bit about the concepts underlying our project.
Thank you, Antoine. Amongst the different constructs that we looked at for this project, we started by looking at hospitality. Now, hospitality has been studied as a complex and very multidimensional construct. However, hospitality is often referred to as a relationship that exists between a guest and a host, which is enacted through human exchange. Now, the role of hospitality educators is therefore to ensure that the hospitality graduates that we are teaching to enter the industry, taking into consideration not only the commercial domain of hospitality, but with, of course, appropriate attitudes, skills, competencies, behaviors that are culturally and privately hospitable. Now, hospitableness is in fact being considered to bring a unique competitive advantage to commercial hospitality. Now, much research has been conducted and has investigated numerous attitudes, skills, competencies of hospitable employees. Just for this project, we have decided to synthesize existing research and define a hospitable service mindset as a set of skills, attitudes, and behaviors which are driven by empathy, warmth, authenticity, adaptability, anticipation of customer needs, etc., which enhance service processes and delivery. Developing such mindset, of course, requires the attention toward high touch, human touch, relationship building, which in the industry are typically displayed during service and face-to-face encounters. Now, the face-to-face component of this teaching is therefore deemed fundamental to develop a hospitality service mindset. And in fact, social and physical presence provides a platform for educators to mimic and demonstrate hospitableness, but also for students, it allows them to explore and own hospitable skills and attitudes, behaviors, and competencies in a safe environment. Now, among these teaching methods that have been employed, Antoine has talked about some. We often have seen a reliance on active and experiential learning, which creates these safe environments and these simulation and these situations that enact real life and include things like internship, field trips, job shadowings, etc., all which require face-to-face teaching models to be enacted. And now I'm going to pass it on to Cindy, who will be talking about the role of information technology in hospitality education.
Thank you, Anita. So building on what Anita has discussed in terms of the concept we have covered and also the conventional methods used to teach hospitality, I'll be talking about how the role of information technology in hospitality and how hospitality is being taught. Active and experiential learning have been increasingly adopted with the help and the use of information technology. Research has shown that online pedagogy provides various benefits to tourism and hospitality. It results in higher levels of satisfaction among students, and it also increases students' capabilities to utilize and adopt technology in the workplace. These are skills that are crucial and fundamental in the current tourism and hospitality landscape. However, the effectiveness of online learning also relies heavily on the educator's ability to design curriculum that would enhance online learning. Simply digitizing traditional teaching methods and replicating them will not lead to significant benefits. Sigala talked about the constructivist and collaborative learning approaches to increase interaction, social networking, and student active participation in the classroom. And constructivist approach basically looks at how we can encourage and enhance critical thinking in an online classroom, whereas collaborative learning approaches look at how we can increase group interaction in a virtual environment. Sigala also talked about personalized and adaptive e-learning models, and that focuses on how important it is to match our teaching instructions to different learning orientation of our students. Through our literature, we identified a key gap in knowledge that we hope our research could address. Past studies have focused largely on conceptual work and also considered students' perspectives. There's a lack of research that actually looks at the experience of educators teaching hospitality online and how the intangible aspect of hospitality can actually be imparted in a classroom that is online and virtual. So the aim and objectives of our research is to explore the experience of educators in higher education institutions teaching hospitality in an online environment, and how a hospitable service mindset, which, as Anita has mentioned, it's fundamentally pinned by concepts of warmth, authenticity, empathy, and attentiveness to others, can be taught in an environment that is mediated through technology and when interactions are limited to a virtual classroom. This research is guided by the following objectives. The first is to explore hospitality educators' perceptions of what constitutes a hospitality service mindset and how this is traditionally taught in higher education hospitality courses. We would then seek to investigate the experience and perception of hospitality educators with utilizing online teaching models and methods to impart and develop a hospitable service mindset among students, and finally identify challenges faced by hospitality educators as well as strategies implemented to impart and develop a hospitable service mindset through online teaching. To achieve these objectives, and of course our overall aim, we will be implementing a qualitative approach to our research, as it allows us to understand the phenomenon through the lens of our participants, who are educators and practitioners in this field. The population will include educators in higher education institutions who are currently or have in the past taught online. To recruit participants, we will be using convenience and snowballing sampling methods. And to collect the data, we will be conducting semi-structured interviews online, and where permitted and preferred by our respondents, we will also opt for face-to-face options. Thematic analysis will be used to analyze the data that we have collected.
To conclude, what we're expecting to obtain from this project is a few theoretical and practical implications. Theoretically, we're aiming to bring to light what a hospitable service mindset is and how this can be imparted to students in the current and in the future landscape of hospitality education. But of course, there are also multiple stakeholders that would have practical implications deriving from this research, including obviously educators, which are feeling supported, and students that maximize their learning outcomes in their education, and education providers able to design online hospitality curriculums that produce value for the students. But ultimately, of course, the hospitality industry to benefit from graduates that are well equipped with skills, competencies, and attitudes that provide and help in delivering a hospitable and quality service in a high-touch environment.
So thank you very much for listening to us today. And we would like to invite all that want to participate in our study to contact any of us with our emails listed today. Thank you again and have a great day.
Welcome to our presentation, Thinking Outside the Escape Box, using game-based learning to test and reinforce students' learning. My name is Nikki Massionis and my co-presenters today are Karen Hughes and Isabella Yee. So why game-based learning is important? I'm sure one of the key challenges that we all have as educators is trying to engage our students in the classroom. And game-based learning has been championed as a powerful method of instruction in terms of teaching and learning, which can engage learners on several levels, including effectively, so in terms of their emotional connection to the content, as well as to the classroom environment. Cognitively, in terms of the way they take on the knowledge and that they learn the information. Behaviourally, in the way that they interact with each other and importantly with us as their teachers. And also in a socio-cultural aspect, which is really critical when we teach such culturally diverse student cohorts. The actual type of engagement differs depending on the context and on the learners themselves and on the different learning styles. But one of the key things that comes out of the literature on game-based learning is that it is really successful in motivating students to be engaged. And also, obviously, we're really interested in helping our students to gain the soft skills to help them to be more job ready and employable. So the skills such as communication, negotiation, leadership, and so on. And not to mention, of course, critical and creative thinkers, which escape boxes can do very well. So how do we get our students to think outside the box? For those who may not be familiar, in terms of what an escape box is, it's based very much on the escape box, on the escape rooms, which is a popular trend. I guess it's a newish trend that people enjoy, where they try to, teams of gamers try to crack codes and escape from either a room or a series of rooms. So the escape box itself is a practical, physical version of this, where students can engage in the content of the course, which is embedded in various scenarios, and try to crack the code to win the box. So escape boxes can be presented as a physical box in a face-to-face environment, or they can also be presented in a digital version online. So this is the version that I ran, which was a physical escape box in a leadership course in 2019, before we went digital and before we went online. And the idea here was to create a fun and interactive learning for the students to help them to achieve the learning outcomes, which for us was about identifying leadership theories and looking at effective leadership characteristics and attributes. Our game was set to a 60-minute countdown clock, which was visible or displayed on screens around the classroom, and it ticked down the 60 minutes on the clock, which created a real sense of excitement and urgency for the students as they tried to compete in the game. Each team had an escape box on the desk, which looked a little bit like the one you saw on the previous slide, and was about the size of a shoebox. And within that was a series of puzzles that they had to work their way through to be able to unlock the padlocks and move to the next puzzle. Some of the puzzles were very difficult and the scenarios were quite challenging. So we did provide some clues or some hints through QR scanning codes, visible ink and UV light, and even an AI avatar, which they could access through their mobile digital devices. At the end of the game, we had winners, obviously, the first team who achieved the successful the challenge, and then we had a debriefing session so the students could all work out how they went and how we achieved the learning outcomes for the session. The students were really visibly energised and excited about this experience, with not wanting to leave the classroom at the end of the session. So we felt it was a great challenge and a great success.
I also designed an escape box based on the success of Nikki's. This one was for a second year undergraduate course in sustainable tourism. And initially this was also a physical escape box, but 2 weeks before we were due to roll it out in tutorials, COVID-19 hit, and we went online learning, and so we had to convert to digital very fast. Essentially, the aims of our escape box were to check students' understanding of the potential impacts of tourism on the built and natural environment, on the economy, and on the community. But underlying that, and something that we never told the students, was we were really keen to encourage interaction between our Chinese students and our Australian students. We wanted the domestic students to appreciate the value of having Chinese students on their team. So we embedded these ideas, these aims into our product. We developed a game that had an underlying story about 3 siblings who competed with each other to have the most amazing holidays. So we had Aunt Kitty, who in her youth climbed all over the pyramids, attended mummy wrapping performances and cruised the Nile. And these are actually based on real stories and photographs. We had Uncle Jack, who went to Africa with Dr. Chan to live in remote tribal villages and hunt zebras. And then we had Aunt Lydia, who spent her dotage cruising the South Pacific, contributing to food waste and palm oil consumption, while deploring the increasing levels of garbage in the ocean. Clues about the positive and negative impacts of their trips were embedded in the postcards that they sent to each other over the years. We made a video introduction by Dr. Chan's niece, and essentially the story was she had discovered an old treasure chest in the attic full of these postcards and also some souvenirs. And she invites students to help her identify possible impacts of the siblings' trips. This introduction then leads into the first puzzle that features a famous Chinese poem. So right at the beginning, we are introducing Chinese elements to try and pull together the Chinese and the Australian students. Now, when we converted to digital, we had to do, as I said, we had to do that quickly. We had to call in the services of our learning designers, so we're not going to pretend that we did it all ourselves. But in the process, we actually found that there were many benefits of digital over the physical boxes. The first of these, which is really important, is essentially the sky is the limit. There's a huge range of illustrations we can use. High resolution, doesn't matter what the quality of your printer is, and these can be digitally enhanced or altered. The other thing is that you can access things like video recordings, songs, noises, etc., and use those as clues. And you can also provide links to online resources that, again, provide more clues to help students figure out the puzzles. A number of other important benefits. The digital version can be done in consecutive sessions. So unlike the physical box where you have to put everything back together again before you can use it, digital, you can roll it out 1 minute after the students have finished it, the next group can start. They're difficult to break. They don't require maintenance, and they're easy to update and change.
So we conducted preliminary analysis on the student feedback collected at the end of each game. Students strongly agree that the escape box enhance their learning experiences, consolidate their understanding of knowledge, encourage team collaboration and communication, and bring excitement to formal learning environments. According to the feedback, there are 3 themes emerged. First, there is a high level of enjoyment with the escape box activities. Students frequently mention that the activity was really fun, unusual, exciting, interesting, allow me to learn in a really fun way. So using game has made learning more like leisure, which is attractive to students. Second, students also admitted that by participating in escape box, they were able to apply knowledge and develop soft skills, things like critical thinking, problem solving, and leadership. Finally, feedback also showed that the social aspects, things like teamwork, communication, and being around with other teams are critical and highly valued by students as they created a sense of togetherness. An interesting finding to note that the physical version was rated more positively than the digital format in student satisfaction, but it was considered to be more stressful because of the presence of other teams and the audible ticking down of the clock. However, there are challenges and lessons learned from running escape box activities, particularly in the digital format. Digital engagement can be very tricky. Students not turning on cameras, poor internet connections often hinder participation. Unlike the physical escape box, where everyone has access to the box, the digital platform requires only one member of the team to share and control the screen. This has created a lack of control among the rest of the team members, as it limits their freedom to explore other clues at their own pace. Another challenge lies in the fact that each team competes in separate breakout rooms without knowing the progress of other groups. This has occasionally led to a weakened competitive spirits, lack of sense of urgency, and the team morale. The game-based learning created a memorable learning experience for many of our students. And one of the highlight comments made by one of our students was, if I had to pick one thing that will forever stand out when I hear leadership, it would be the escape box challenge. Thank you very much for listening, and we welcome any feedback and comments.